Everyone loves a good mystery, but what happens when a mystery never has a satisfying ending? Imagine you find yourself on a lonely road, out to clear your head from the day's bustle. You take a quiet stride along the usual lonely path down the park. But instead of the refreshing winds that help you calm your nerves, the night has other plans for you. The story does not begin with a monster. It begins with silence. California in the late 1960s was alive with contradictions. Protest marches rolled across university campuses. Music pulsed out of San Francisco's streets, while couples slipped away to quiet roads under wide black skies, chasing privacy and love. It was an age of rebellion and liberation. Yet beneath it all lay a current of fear, one that would soon become embodied in a figure who seemed less like a man and more like a shadow. That shadow first revealed itself on the outskirts of Vallejo, on Lake Herman Road, the night of December 20th, 1968. David Faraday was 17. Betty Lou Jensen was 16. They were young, tentative, their relationship just beginning to form, and that winter night, they drove out in David's Rambler station wagon. The road was desolate, framed by fields and fences, the air sharp with December cold. They parked under a blank sky where the stars hung low, their silence broken only by distant dogs barking across farmland. But someone else was there, watching, waiting. A car pulled in behind them. The headlights washed over the Rambler before cutting out. At first, there might have been confusion. Another couple, maybe, or someone who needed help. But the figure that stepped out did not speak, did not hesitate. The first gunshot shattered the calm. Metal rang as bullets tore into the car. David was struck and fell beside the vehicle. His life ended before he could understand what was happening. Betty Lou bolted into the darkness, her instinct pure and desperate. She barely made it 30 feet before the shots found her too. When the sheriff's deputies arrived, they found still bodies under the winter sky. No suspect, no explanation, no footprints in the silence, just spent shell casings scattered like markers of something deliberate. It looked less like passion and more like ritual. The killer vanished back into the night. For 7 months, the shadow was silent. California moved on as it always did. The deaths on Lake Herman Road were whispered about in Vallejo, but in a state where violence had become common, it was just another tragedy. Until July 4th, 1969. Fireworks arced in the distance, faint bursts of color above Vallejo. In Blue Rock Springs Park, another lover's lane, Darlene Farron, 22, and Michael Majot, 19, parked in Darlene's brown Corvair. They sat in the still heat of summer night, headlights occasionally passing on the road. A car approached them slowly. Its headlights burned into their rearview mirror, then turned away. Relief might have settled in for a moment, but it was brief. Minutes later, the same car returned. This time, it parked behind them. The figure stepped out. He carried a flashlight, its beam harsh in the dark. To Michael and Darlene, it may have looked at first like a police officer, someone checking in. But then, the light cut straight into their eyes, blinding them, and the gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped through the car. Michael crumpled instantly, his body struck multiple times. Darlene screamed as the gun turned on her, each shot deliberate. The killer walked back toward his car, but then, chillingly, he returned. He fired again into the wounded bodies, ensuring silence. Then he drove away. But this time, he was not finished. Within an hour, a call rang through the Vallejo Police Department. The voice was calm, detached, almost rehearsed. I want to report a double murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye. It was not just violence anymore. It was theater. By the end of July, 3 Bay Area newspapers received nearly identical letters. Each was signed with a crude crosshair symbol, a circle with intersecting lines, stark and unnerving. Inside were cryptograms, strings of symbols the writer demanded be printed on the front page. If they refused, he promised more deaths. The public awoke to the realization that the killer had stepped out of the shadows and into their morning papers. The codes were taunts, but hidden within them, the writer insisted, was his identity. A schoolteacher and his wife, Donald and Betty Harden, cracked the first cipher within days. What they uncovered was not a name, but a confession, an admission that killing gave the author the most thrilling experience. He wrote of collecting slaves for the afterlife, as if murder were a currency. The name he had chosen for himself was simple and terrifying: the Zodiac. On September 27th, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in daylight. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking on the edge of Lake Berryessa. The water glimmered in the autumn sun. It was peaceful, almost idyllic, the kind of setting where nothing dark should exist. But from a distance, a man approached. He wore a black executioner's hood, crude eye holes cut into the fabric, and stitched across his chest was the now familiar crosshair symbol. The disguise stripped away humanity. He looked less like a person than a figure from a nightmare. He carried a gun. He told Brian and Cecilia he had escaped from prison, that he needed their car and money. His voice was calm, rehearsed, almost polite. He gave them lengths of plastic clothesline and instructed Cecilia to tie Brian first, then tied her himself. His manner was careful, methodical. Then he drew a knife. The assault was sudden and merciless. The blade plunged again and again, Brian collapsing under the weight of it, Cecilia crying out as the strikes found her. When it was over, the hooded figure walked away without haste, leaving them bleeding in the grass. He made one final gesture. With a black marker, he scrawled on Brian's Volkswagen the crosshair, the dates of previous murders, and this new location. It was a signature left like a challenge. Cecilia died 2 days later. Brian survived, though scarred forever, not just in body, but in memory. Less than 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac moved into the city. Paul Stein, a cab driver, picked up a passenger near the theater district. The ride was routine until the cab pulled into Presidio Heights. there without warning, the passenger drew a gun and fired a single shot into the back of Steiny's head. What followed was chilling in its precision. The killer leaned forward, cut away a piece of the driver's bloody shirt, and wiped down the cab to remove prints. Teenagers watching from a nearby window saw it unfold in horror. They called police immediately. Patrol officers arrived within minutes. But in a cruel twist, a dispatcher mistakenly described the suspect as a black male. The Zodiac, a white man, walked calmly past responding officers, vanishing into the Presidio parklands. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter. Inside was the missing piece of Paul Stein's shirt. The message was clear. The Zodiac was everywhere, and he could reach anyone. The letters escalated. He threatened to shoot children as they rode school buses, described plans for bombs, sketched diagrams of destruction. He mocked police, bragged of his superiority, fed on the terror he was creating. Some ciphers took decades to solve. One, the 340 character code, was finally cracked in 2020. Its message a smug taunt. I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise. The fear was not just in Vallejo or San Francisco. It was everywhere. Parents watched their children at bus stops with unease. Couples no longer trusted the quiet safety of lovers' lanes. Every man who walked alone at night, every neighbor who seemed odd or withdrawn, could be the Zodiac. Police searched for him relentlessly. Arthur Lee Allen emerged as the strongest suspect, a man with violent tendencies, an obsession with young children, and disturbing coincidences. He owned watches marked with the Zodiac symbol, spoke of killing, and lived near several crime scenes. Yet handwriting comparisons and DNA failed to confirm him. Ross Sullivan, a library worker who disappeared after the first killings, bore a strong resemblance to composite sketches. His odd behavior and dark writings made him a candidate, but no evidence held. Lawrence Kane, with memory issues and a trail that placed him near victims, seemed possible. Others, too, emerged over the years, each fitting pieces but never completing the puzzle. The Zodiac remained a ghost. By the mid-1970s, the letters slowed. Some believe he died. Others think he simply stopped, satisfied that he had cemented his legend. But his shadow never left. The families of victims carried unanswered questions for decades. David and Betty Lou, Darlene, Cecilia, Paul, their names became part of a story with no ending, only a lingering ache. Police, retired now, still admit frustration. Journalists, cryptographers, and amateur sleuths continue to pore over the codes, the handwriting, the scant evidence. The crosshair remains burned into memory. A crude symbol mailed on yellowing paper that reminded the world that monsters do not hide in forests or myths. They walk calmly through city streets, take taxis, and write letters to the morning paper. The Zodiac sought immortality. In his letters, he wrote that his victims would be his slaves in the afterlife. What he may not have realized is that his crimes achieved another kind of permanence. He became a story without resolution, a shadow that never faded. Today, his name still unsettles. His unsolved ciphers whisper across decades. His crimes replay in books, films, and documentaries. And always, the same question remains. Who was he? Perhaps the most terrifying truth is that the answer never came. That he lived out his days unnoticed, blending back into ordinary life, a face in the crowd that no one ever truly saw. And so, the Zodiac remains eternal. Not because of what he did, but because he was never caught. And when the night is quiet, when the road is empty, when headlights bloom suddenly in a rearview mirror, you might understand what his victims felt. The cold weight of being watched. The certainty that something patient and merciless has chosen you. The Zodiac did not need capture to win. His victory was in the silence he left behind. The silence that still lingers whenever the world remembers the shadow that called itself by a name. This is Dark Matter Crimes. To keep getting updates on mysterious crimes like this, subscribe to our channel and tell us your thoughts about the Zodiac Killer in the comments below. Bye for now.